Hello everyone, my name is Brandon Norris and I would like to give you a little bit of insight on my edTPA Lite lesson and some of the experiences I had. For my project, I did a 4-page greeting card, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about that here in a little bit. So, I did my lesson at William Lenore Middle School in Lenore, North Carolina. The lesson I taught was intended for an introduction to graphics communications, which is a high school course, but I taught it to a 7th grade math class. This is the resource class that I work in. We do math and ELA, and I work one-on-one with a behavior student. So all the students in the class had either 504 plans or IEPs. In some instances, they had both. They did pretty well with what I taught, though. I tried my best to break it down and deliver in a way that they would understand it. And as you'll see later on in the slides, I have some grades in my assessments, and you'll see just how well some of them did. So for my lesson, like I said, we did a 4-page greeting card. This was going to teach the kids about how books and booklets are made and what a page imposition is. We also went over how to use a ruler properly and how to convert fractions to decimals properly. The students need to understand what margins are and how they're created. And for the software, they had to convert those fractions on the ruler into decimals. Luckily, these students had a pretty good grasp of how to convert fractions to decimals. The ruler part was probably the hardest for them. The Christmas card design wasn't really that bad. That was another thing we did. They actually handled it pretty good. We went with images from the Creative Cloud, and they just typed up simple messages. And then the students learned how to create a correct page imposition. We did this in Adobe InDesign. It's sort of the industry standard version of, I guess, Microsoft Works. It's just full-scale page layout, page setup software. I mentioned it a little bit before, and here's a little bit of reasoning behind why I chose this one. This is a great lesson for the introduction to graphic arts. The students need to know how books are made, how to print a book, how to cut a book, how to fold pages. I mean, this encompassed pretty much all of it. And I chose to do a Christmas card with the kids, and we turned one sheet of paper, which is really simple, into a 4-page card. By 4 pages, I mean after folded, you have the front cover, the inside pages, and the back cover. Now, were we to cut the top after we folded it, that would create an 8-page booklet. And that's how books are made. They are printed multiple pages onto one sheet, and then they're cut, and then they're bound with a saddle stitch. Printers and publishers do this because it cuts down on costs and time. And as I mentioned before, if we were to cut it, it would actually have made 8 pages. The pages would double if we were to trim the top. And now I'll go into a little bit more detail. So like I said before, introduction to graphic communications. The 4 standards that we addressed in this lesson are: understand digital file preparation process used in the printing industry, understand digital file output process in the printing industry, apply measurement procedures used in the printing industry, apply basic math procedures used in the printing industry. In the next slide, you'll see I threw this in so you guys would have a little bit of visual. It's some sample art I did personally before I delivered the lesson. It is a little bit of artwork, and then it is the sample card that I folded and printed and handed out to each student. I had one sitting ready on their desk whenever they came into the classroom. To the left, you'll see some stuff I created in Adobe Illustrator. These are just made with simple shapes. I made a little penguin, and then I used the pencil tool to make the feet. But the rest of it was just basic shapes, curves. And the card to the right is actually what I created in InDesign. And you can see it's pretty simple. It just has a elegant script text with a few images. The back cover is actually, I did the Highbright and Graphics department, because usually when you see a card, it'll have its Hallmark stamp on the back or whatever publisher or company made the card, and then I signed it my name. If you'll notice, page 1 and 4 are actually upside down. That's because when you fold the sheet of paper, it actually flips it right side up. And then 2 and 3 are actually side by side. Those are your inside pages. And we'll go into that lesson here in a minute. So what I did in my instruction was have the kids do a couple different things. The students created a folded 4-page dummy. We call these dummies because this is your paper sample that you go by whenever you go into the software to make your final copy. This actually prepares you and makes sure everything's laid out the way it's supposed to be. I had to have the students use a ruler. We did something called the ruler game online, which the high school students actually do this as well. The students convert fractions to decimals. They needed to do this to create those margins. Students will demonstrate the ability to do a 4-page imposition, which, like I said, was 4 pages on one sheet of paper. Students had to demonstrate file and graphic input in Adobe InDesign and Illustrator. We really, like I said, I only demonstrated how to use Adobe Illustrator. My students were unfamiliar with it, and that's how it's going to be with the Introduction to Graphic Communications. The kids will actually be learning how to use Adobe Illustrator whenever they start the Introduction to Graphic Communications class. They will have no prior knowledge to it unless, of course, they had downloaded it and kind of messed with it on their own before they got into the class. Then I had the students all send me their design, and I printed it, and we checked to see if it was arranged properly. This is a little bit of continued information. So the first thing we did was the ruler game, and in my video I really probably should have prepared better. I had taken some notes with me and written it down. I got a little bit all over the place when I was doing it. I had trouble staying on task. It's one thing to teach or deliver something that has already been set up for you, but it's another thing when you prepare the lesson and then teach it yourself. I obviously need to have some written notes whenever I go. I knew the kids very well, so we got along. They listened to what I said. They engaged me. We kept it pretty casual and managed to get a lot of work done. The kids listened very well to me. I mean, normally they're a little talkative. I wish they would have talked a little bit more, actually. But as I said before, they did very well for me. Very focused. The next thing I did was the paper folding exercise. So what we did, we all got an 8.5 by 11 sheet of printer paper, and we divided the sheet into 4 sections. Once we did that, I had the kids, without unfolding their card, write down how they thought the pages would be laid out. And then we checked our work by folding the sheet of paper. I did the demonstration of hot dog fold, hamburger fold, and I had the kids fold the piece of paper, go back and look where they had signed their name and wrote the page number to see if anyone had got it right. I actually had probably 1 or 2 students that did get it right, and I don't know that they unfolded it maybe while I was standing up there teaching, or they were just that knowledgeable about it. But we did unfold them to see how it was, and then we correctly numbered the pages and kind of worked up our ideas of what we were going to do. The next thing we did was the conversion worksheet. You'll see that later on in my slides. The students did a great job. This was one of 3 things that I graded. I'll go back and say the ruler game was a grade. They struggled the most with that. And then their layout was graded by rubric, and I'll show you the rubric here in a little bit. I wasn't very strict on that. I just wanted the kids to think about design. But with the ruler game and the math conversion, I thought at this point was probably a little bit more important and a little bit more on their level. And then, like I said, after that, they sent me their design, and then we printed it. At the end, not as a grade, but just as a little bit of follow-up, we did a vocabulary worksheet. Very simple. It was just, I think, maybe a dozen questions, and all they had to do was match the term. And we went over that together. There was no grade for it. It was very brief. This lesson, instead of taking 1 day, ended up stretching out and taking me a couple days to do. Like I said, I should have practiced it maybe. I don't have a lot of time extra when I'm working at school, and I could not get into a high school classroom at the time. Not to mention we've got school, and then I'm right in the middle of my wrestling season. But I managed to get this done, and I think it worked pretty well. So here's the ruler game. You can go to www.therulergame.net. And how I graded it, I'll show you on the next page. The students had to reach certain levels in the game. We played the game 3 times. It's actually demonstrated in my video when we did one of the rounds. So I wanted each student to get to at least level 5 to get an A. You get 3 attempts. You click and drag on whatever measurement pops up down at the bottom. I'm sorry, at the top left. And then you have to go to the right dash. And you get, like I said, 3 strikes. And then the game's over. We played the game 3 times. I actually had students make it above level 5. So we had some A's mixed in the group. Here are a few of my assessments. So each one I just counted as a third of the grade. And you'll see right here, the students that reached level 2 got a D. The ones that made it to level 3 got a C. The ones that made it to level 4 got a B. And if you got higher than 5, you got a 95, which was an A. The conversion worksheet was actually 18 sample questions or fractions that I got off the internet, and I have those cited in case you want to pull that up. And I used a standard 10-point grading scale. We actually use that in middle school now, and I was not aware of that until this year. And then the final thing they were graded on was that 4-page greeting card. And in the next slide, you'll see kind of how the students graded. The 3 students I observed was the high, or that I documented was my highest grade. One that was pretty average, and then one that was on the lower end. So you can see student 2 did the best, and I actually have their work samples in the slide. I scanned those in and got rid of their names, and you'll see what student 2 actually did. She's very intelligent. Sometimes it's hard to get work out of her, but when she does her work and focuses, she is very smart. Student 3 seemed to struggle the most. This student needed a lot of individual attention. That was probably why it went into 2 days. We had our lead teacher and another instructional assistant, but I did all of this on my own, and they just sat back and observed during the class. This student definitely needed more individualized instruction and probably the use of a calculator doing the work. She struggled a lot with the ruler game, and I tried my best to break it down to her. We held up a actually I didn't hold it up. We've got a 16th 16 dash divider in the classroom on the wall, and we went over that together. I'll go into a little bit more detail later on. I'm kind of getting up in my time. So here is student 2's work samples. You can see her conversion sheet on the side. She scored a 100. This is what she come up with, and she just pulled clip art from the Creative Cloud, and then it went through just a Google image search. She searched star, Christmas tree, and heart. I love it. I mean, just to get the kids to make a design, fold their own card, and if they want, print it up and give it to a family member. And then to the right, you can see this student got a 95. She got all of her scores on the rubric in the level 4. Unfortunately, I did not document and give feedback on the sheet. I've just went over each one in the class and told them what their grade was. So like I said, I should have prepared a little bit better, but this was very interesting. I kind of know where I need to go now for teaching a lesson, and I'm very thankful that we have the edTPA light before we go in and do the actual edTPA, because I probably would have bombed it, and I would be doing it again before they let me be a teacher. And I hope some of you did better than I did, because this was a big learning experience for me. Here's some of the references if you guys would like to create your own rubric, research a little bit about the printing industry, find worksheets, or the ruler game. I actually did not document that, but I give you the link in the previous slides, so you should be able to pull it up. If you have any kind of math, go to it, try it out. As I said before, very interesting, huge learning experience for me. I hope you guys all got as much as I got out of it, as far as teaching a class and then going through all those commentaries. And I would like to say thanks, guys. We made it through another semester, and I hope you all have a Merry Christmas.